Hello and welcome back to Tin Star. The train's distant whistle echoes out again across the valley. There's still no sign of Reginald, but with his sister in custody, he may seek to rescue her before he tries anything else. All this other effort might well just be a diversion. Ignore the train and head back to Preston Springs, secure in the knowledge that my enemy will attempt a rescue, or those plaintive blasts from a train mean that something important is happening out there on the rails to the west. Let's ignore the train and head back. We need to have an eye on Regina. You mount up and ride out. The ride back to Preston Springs is a brief one. Miss Carroway has a pistol and paces before her, laid out on a blanket strangely free of dust. With meticulous care, she cleans and oils the weapon down to the tiniest portion. "Heck of a day," she notes. "Glad I rode out with you." Let her talk if she wants. "I gotta ask, what comes next?" she wonders aloud. We do what we have to, whatever that is. "Yeah, we do that," she agrees. Then she begins to reassemble her pistols, piece by piece. A log pops on the fire and Dan snorts himself awake. After a few blinks, he meets your gaze. "I'd get some shut-eye if I were you." "Listen, I still haven't figured out how to tell this tale," he says softly. With that, he leans his head back and nods off back to sleep. Come the next day, Preston Springs is right where you left it, and floating above it is a colourful and immense balloon the size of a broad barn. A thin black line secures the balloon toward the earth, and a little group gathers where the line touches the ground. Their gazes shift upward repeatedly toward a slender figure in the basket just below the billows of silk. As you ride up, Carlos waves to you and calls over. "My niece is at it again, seeking to soar when she should be solidly on the ground." "Come now, Carlos, are you not Sangre Halcon de Veracruz? Does the blood hawk not soar?" "That is a title," Carlos replies, then gestures toward the balloon where Maria is perched. "This is madness." Behind him, Eduardo, Maria's big blonde bodyguard, can't help but nod, even as he keeps one hand on the winch. Timothy Sadler stands beside the big man and doesn't notice a thing in the world except the bright balloon above. How long has Maria been up? "Too long," Carlos replies, then mutters something pointed in his native tongue under his breath. "What made today so special as to warrant going aloft?" "She wished it," Carlos notes, "and I could not find a sufficient reason to say no to my niece." "Well, then, what are the complaints?" "Why not let her?" You know what? I'm tempted to head off. You know what? Sure, we can't help everyone. We need to get back to town. Carlos gives a little nod to you, then returns his gaze to the balloon bearing his niece. It is a quick ride into Preston Springs. The townsfolk have begun to gather to see the sight of the rising dust to the west. Yes. Or run and hide. Head toward my office. We'll do that first. Halfway to your office, the silhouette of a familiar figure rides into town. Though covered in trail dust, J.T. Preston still manages to seem like he just stepped out from a barber shop. "What is all this?" he asks as he eases close. "Is something happening?" "Well, doesn't that just beat the horse into the grave?" he says with a sigh. With a flick of fingers, he and his deputies readily take up positions around the hotel. Regina is right where you left her, though from the look of feigned innocence upon her features, you expect that she has been plotting something even from behind bars. Miss Carroway heads right for the arsenal and stocks up on her weapons of war. Dan calmly settles in before the stove and sits to frying a little bacon with a biscuit chaser. "Rearm myself. You take on enough bullets to fight a small war. Take some more." Step over to Regina's cell. "Hello again, Marshal," Regina says as you approach. "I'm surprised you aren't dead." Tried to escape yet?" course not. I'm your prisoner, Regina replies sweetly. I have this awful, terrible idea of involving you as a hostage. Is it a dirty, nasty thought unworthy of a woman of my breeding? And does it include ropes? That isn't what I meant. I'm going to use you to force your sibling to surrender. It takes but a little while to apply the 2 sets of shackles. Beyond the town's limits, a line of horsemen approach from the west. They methodically work their way past the slaughterhouse, then begin to cross the muddy river. At their head rides Reginald. His usual tidy suit has been marred by a double bandolier of bullets across his chest. A good 2 dozen bandits follow with their rifles at the ready. That's far enough. No, it's not, Reginald calls out. Give me my sister or this whole town will burn. You were going to do that anyway. I was, Regina admits, but I do not have to be thorough. Drop your weapon or there will be enough trouble to fill a grave. It's time to throw down, Reginald calls back and motions his men forward. The enemy starts shooting up the Mullerlode. Dan, no, carry. Miss Carroway fells foe after foe with her rifle until the hammer clicks on an empty chamber. The bandits at the rear begin to dismount, firing as they do so. The foe's assault stalls, but shouts rise up from the north where a second column approaches. Dan charges a knot of foes and lays into them with his dagger until there is not a single one left standing. The bandits at the rear begin to dismount, firing as they do so. The foe's assault stalls, but shouts rise up from the north. Yeah. The enemy starts shooting up the Mullerlode. The enemy falters, but a determined band pushes you back to the steps of your office. At the steps of your office, you turn and find that armed bandits have gathered along the north side of the street. Those part to reveal a steely-eyed Reginald. His suit is crisp and sharp as his shirt. The pistol in his hand is a cold iron thing. Say your prayers early and often, the heavily manacled Regina calls up from the latest patch of ground you have thrown her onto. My brother will beat you to death with your own severed arm. Marshal, Reginald calls out, hand over my sister or die. Everybody dies, especially your sister. No. Open fire. As the first shot rings out, a cry of Sanger Halcon rises up from the hotel as Carlos strides out with pistol in hand. Eduardo follows with his twin short shotguns gripped in hand. Behind those two strides a rifle-armed Maria Agostina with a regal bearing. The bandits charge. Eduardo unleashes both his shotguns, sends a whole crowd of them to see their maker. Not to be outdone, Carlos wades into foe, his pistol cracking out lethal rounds. Behind him, Maria works the lever of her rifle and brings foe after foe to their knees. Across the way, Reginald takes careful aim at you with a cold iron pistol. Carrie? Miss Carroway takes aim with a pistol. Click, click. Reginald pivots to face her. His glasses are low on his nose as he fires a single shot. Miss Carroway reels back and collapses in the dust. No! Finish this! With a flurry of shots, you bring Reginald down. Maria's rifle barks time and again. Carlos methodically empties his pistols. Dan throws men about, sometimes back and forth with Eduardo. The remaining bandits scatter, and victory is yours. A glance at the horizon finds it a vast blue canvas that stretches out before you. Now quick, help Miss Carroway. Please tell me she's not dead. Yes. Review legendary events. Sure. Let's actually do that. We have never done that before. Let's actually have a look at that. Thanks to Den Schmidt, the killing of Ben Carson out of Big Bell Ranch becomes an often embellished tale about the dangers of strangers out west. Stranger danger. 1 legend point awarded. The bloodless destruction of the Red Ribbon Mining Company's dam soon became one of those often told stories in saloons across the Old West. Everyone had a different take on it, but few doubt it happened or that the marshal must have been involved somehow. 3 legend points awarded. Nice. Oh, that's quite a lot. The marshal's brush with William Billy Tate, that I do not remember, is later commemorated in a dime novel, The Tin Stars of Nevada, where he recounts meeting the genial Marshal Calamity Smith. 1 legend point. Tumbleweed Jack survived his time in the Carson City prison and stepped out into the sunlight a free and changed man. In time, he returned to Kansas and started up a farm alongside his brothers and cousins. The family swiftly learned to prosper even when times are tight, and to his dying day, Jack praised Marshall Smith. The Marshal's telegram to President Johnson is naturally settled into the presidential archives. Many decades later, scholars and historians stumble upon it and readily drew it forth into the public eye, shedding light both on the workings of post-Civil War government, the presidency, and Americana in general. 2 legend points. The telegram to and from the Secretary of the Treasury Office, Hugh McCulloch, was kept in the official archives. In the early 21st century, those records were converted to a digital format, and the Marshal's correspondence piqued historical interest in the federal marshal system and the Old West. Word of the Marshal's intention to confront Steele in Preston Springs leaped onto the telegraph wires and for one autumn day readily griped the imagination of the American nation. 3 legend points for that. Okay. A dime novel called Massacre at Bloody Ribbon was based on actual events surrounding an illegal dam built by hydraulic miners. Though the sheriff in it is depicted as the villain, as is a bearskin-clad Scottish Highlander named Dan, a careful reading realizes things are otherwise. The dam would have allowed debris to accumulate and eventually flood the region, and that removing it was the only way to prevent that. Naturally, hydraulic mining companies saw things differently and spread the story far and wide about the depredations they endured. 2 legend points. The preposterous story of the Golden Stagecoach, pulled by a team of 12 white stallions and driven by the half-cousin of the devil, was but a flash in the pan as far as the Old West is concerned. But a century later, the tale finds a home in the metal music scene, precisely because it sounded so epic. Of all Martin Baldwin's works, the one that stands out the most is his dime novel called The Copper Siren. A lurid tale of a young telegraph operator whose infatuation with a young woman drives him to send a series of false telegrams to her suitors in order to lure his competition to depravity and doom. Baldwin's intimate knowledge of the telegraph, owing to his years of working as the Elko operator, served him well in writing a story replete with details such as the identifying an operator's fist based on the discrete differences they used in transmitting a message. His understanding of just how much truth people ascribe to messages from strangers and the grim realities of frontier marshals. The Copper Siren would inspire many a subsequent writer in a myriad of ways. 1 legend point. Why did I get a legend point for that? The Six-Horn Lodge has many great tales, and among them was the day they met Marshal Calamity Smith. For when they were in need, the Marshal was there to help see them through to safety off Green Deer Valley. The Marshal's efforts greatly limited the flood damage to Preston Springs, and everyone saw just what a Marshal could accomplish besides arresting criminals. It was said that the Marshal got in a fair share of knuckle scrapes across Lander County. 1 legend point. Okay. The death of the Bannock bandit known as Hungry Snake in the Painted Caves was widely reported in Nevada, if only for its sensational backdrop. There were few tricks with black powder or nitroglycerin that the Marshal didn't know, or at least didn't care to learn the hard way. There were few situations that the Marshal couldn't diffuse with a joke, or people that couldn't be riled to a murderous rage with a few choice words. Alright, and there is at least one variation to the Marshal's tale, a single blemish in an otherwise flawless saga. 3 legend points removed. Ah, that's for dying ones, I see. Is that in our achievements? 1 out of 14 possible achievements. True friend to the Indians. Okay. Kill the bear. The K-Bar Award. Did we see a bear? Oh yeah, we did, didn't? Yeah, we definitely did. So you could have killed the bear. I mean, it makes sense. Become the most despicable Marshal. The nameless Marshal. If you just hadn't chosen a name at all. I was tempted. Save the ending to chapter 9.